Okay, question number 3. So we're getting into gear. What were your favorite and least favorite pieces of gear? So this is kind of a two-part question. So favorite and least favorite. And then are you going to make
Mhm.
any changes to your gear on your future hikes?
Mhm. I would say least favorite. This is a tiny thing, but I didn't really get rid of a lot of things, but I actually ended up getting rid of the headlamp I had just because I figured out that I wasn't using it. It wasn't working for me. Um, I really wasn't a huge fan of night hiking. I had kind of thought that I would want to do more night hiking and just luckily because of the circumstances in the desert, it wasn't that hot where I still took afternoon breaks. I was able to like hike through a lot of the day, which some people can't. Um, and so yeah, just wasn't using it. It was rechargeable, which I at first thought would be really good because I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with batteries and stuff. But then I was like, I always had so many other things I needed to charge when I was in town that I was always like, it wasn't the priority, or I would like forget to do it, and then it was like dead anyway. So just ended up being this thing that was like small, but ended up taking up just extra room, extra weight in my pack for no reason. Um, and not terrible and not anything with this specific brand, but just it was something that I didn't end up happening to use. Although, um, then times if I did want a night hike, then a phone flashlight really isn't great because you kill the battery pretty fast. Um, and it's depending on the hike, maybe I'd get a headlamp in the future, but that's just kind of an interesting, like one of those things that you're like, you go in with this perception of like, you need to have this, you're not safe unless you have this. And I personally didn't find that to be true. I guess favorite pieces of gear, it's kind of hard to say with my pack. I did really like, the shape of my pack, how I was able to keep things organized, um, even just down to the color and things like that. Like I said, I did have the back issues that I think were more related to the weight I was carrying, but I had a Gossamer gear pack and, think that it worked well for me. And, I might decrease my weight, but I think I'd still like to try a different Gossamer gear pack in the future. And some of that was too was just like the company. I kept coming across circumstances where it seemed like they were really great. I knew someone whose pack got destroyed by a bear, and they were really great about replacing it, which was, pretty traumatic experience for them. I knew someone else whose just pack had pretty bad wear and tear, and they, helped replace it as well. So, um, for I don't know if you'd call them so much a cottage company. They're definitely getting more popular, but for a smaller company, they're I think super great with their customers and have a size where they're able to do things like that, like help people out. Um, but also just, have really good gear, still are like small and just like a company I felt good about supporting, apart from the fact that I liked their products as well.
Nice. Yeah, Gossamer Gear. What type of pack was it that you got from Gossamer Gear?
Yeah, I had the Mariposa, which is a 60 liter. Um, and I definitely like to go. I don't think I'd want to carry anything bigger than a 50-liter pack. I think it'd be lighter weight. Because I think that's I don't know. I going in, I already had owned the Big Agnes tent I was using, and I think kind of got a bigger pack to fit that tent, and then was able to include other things because I had the bigger pack. And 60 liters is not even that big in the grand scheme of things compared to, but I think getting a smaller pack would help me like force myself to think more about what I'm bringing and things like that. Um, and like I said, I liked my tent. I definitely be interested in looking at lighter weight options. I was carrying a two-person tent because I had it before, and because I heard the advice like that, a two-person tent really isn't that big. But I definitely could have done a one person tent. And I actually wondered too, like by the end in Washington, I was like, oh, does me having this bigger tent, is that like contributing to me being colder at night and things like that?
Mm.
Less insulated, which I'm not sure. I don't really know like how much your body heat affects and, you know, any extra space in the tent, but that was kind of an interesting thing I was wondering. Oh, and then my sleeping bag as well. I did like my sleeping bag again until the very end. I had a 15-degree bag from Mountain Hardware. Um, it was fun because it's not dyed or anything to kind of lessen its environmental impact, but so it's pure white, which I thought was kind of fun to see, like, you know, from the beginning how dirty it would get by the end of the trail. Actually, the grossest thing was how the inside of the sleeping bag got dirtier than the outside, which meant
Mhm.
like it's not my environment that's gross. It's just me. But um and I think I mostly like the sleeping bag. It was super comfortable. But I think I'd be interested in trying out a quilt in the future. Um, Quilts can tend to run a little colder, which is what I was worried about. But I think the problem with me for a sleeping bag was like for almost the whole trail until the very end, it was too warm and I felt very restricted and like my feet felt too warm. And then it was like I was packing for those last 2 weeks when it wasn't warm enough anyway, and I just needed to layer up. So would rather have something that's maybe a little bit cooler but is going to benefit me more throughout a trail, and then change things around at the very end if I need to.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I switched from a sleeping bag to a quilt, and I'm so glad I did. The quilt is just, you can open it up if it's hot. You don't have to like
Hmm.
cinch it in. So it's definitely more versatile. And I got a 10-degree quilt, and I have
Hmm.
always been toasty. Like I've never had a problem being too cold. And I've been in some cold environments at this point. So yeah, I loved switching over to the quilt.
Yeah.
But it's so funny with your sleeping bag, it was white. And so you could see the difference between the inside and
Yeah.
the outside. That's hilarious. I'd like to see, I
Mhm.
mean, maybe this is gross, or I don't know if you still have it or not, but I'd like to see a photo. Like, did you take any pictures of the difference?
Oh, I don't know if I did. And you know, I did wash it. It
Okay.
it started getting really bad around like Oregon because like you're going through like sections where it's like lava rocks and stuff like that and just like ash and your legs are just getting so disgusting. And so did wash, really gross thing. Like I had like I mentioned in the live stream I had some issues where I kept like falling all the time. And so like my knees were bleeding. I got like blood on the inside of the sleeping bag and it definitely looked pretty gnarly at certain points. I don't have it here now, or I don't have a picture or anything, but I think it doesn't look nearly as dirty or gross as I thought it would by the end.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I love that it was white.